Hello, Live in Peace. Thank you for joining us today. This is our second book scope. Last time we pretty much just covered the cover of the book and the back, a little bit about what was inside. Today we're going to talk about the introduction. And if you caught the interview I did about 2 weeks ago, we talked a little bit with Linda Brown on Author Chat about the introduction, and we'll do it on my scope today as well. Feel free to invite any followers and, ask any questions as we go along. And before we get started, just want to say a quick prayer. Thank God for today and this time we have and the gift of another day and another month. And we just thank you that this goes well and helps a listener. And we're blessed by the time we spend together. In Jesus' name, amen. So, if I have to give this a title, I'd call it The Benefits of Being Alone Sometimes. So we're going to look at a few scriptures, because the Bible talks about being alone, and we have two sides to it actually. So we look in Genesis and we see Adam was alone, but God said that wasn't good. But then Jacob, he gets alone, and that's when an angel appears and he sees the ladder and all these things happen. So we'll start there in Genesis. If you look at Genesis 2:18, and I have it pulled up here. It's a scripture that we probably all know. God said it's not good for the man to be alone. And then as a result of that, he said, I'll make him a helper, a companion. So we know that it's never God's will for us to just be alone all the time. So there is a time to have a companion, to have a friend, to have someone to talk to besides, just ourselves, or even just talking to God alone. So we see that point of view, but then we also want to look a little further in Genesis. So that one was Genesis 2:18. Now we look at Genesis 32:24, and let me get there as well. And this will take us to Jacob, which I referenced briefly earlier. So Jacob is in Genesis 32:24, and we see that he was traveling with a large group of people, his family. But then when it gets to verse 24, it says, Jacob stayed behind by himself. And I'm reading from the Message. The King James might say alone. But the Message says, Jacob stayed behind by himself. And what is the result of that? We see, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw he couldn't get the best of Jacob, as they wrestled, he deliberately threw Jacob's hip out. And we see that, Jacob held on and said, I'm not letting go until you bless me. And there was a blessing as a result. From that time, he chose to spend alone. He sent everyone ahead of him, and he stayed by himself. So we can see that there is a benefit in some time spent alone, that, God can speak to us a little more clearly, even if it is a matter of separating from family, which is what he did at this point. So we're not just talking about friends and, shallow associations and relationships, but even your very family members, because Jacob decided to send them ahead, he had that encounter. We see in Exodus, we'll look at two scriptures in Exodus which deal with Moses. And Exodus 3, starting in verse 1, we see Moses had a similar encounter like Jacob did, where he was alone. This is after he leaves Egypt, kills the Egyptian, leaves Egypt. He is, spending 40 years shepherding flock. So from the palace to, the pasture right now, shepherding the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. And Exodus 3:1 tells us that Moses was shepherding the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the west end of the wilderness and came to the mountain of God, Horeb. And this is the key point here. The angel of God appeared to him in flames of fire, blazing out of the middle of the bush. He looked. The bush was blazing away, but it didn't burn. So those are verses 1 and 2 in Exodus 3. So we see again, somebody is alone, with sheep this time, and God chooses to finally get their attention and call them into their assignment. So, okay, I have your attention now. You're not busy with the palace and, everything else going on and getting married to Jethro's daughters and trying to put your life together. You're just out here shepherding. You've decided, this is my life. Now I can speak to you through fire, through a burning bush, through an angel. But a little further on in Exodus, we see the balance coming into play again, because this is the same Moses. Exodus 18. Now in verse 17, we see Moses again with Jethro, his father-in-law, giving him some advice. And if we go down to verse 17 in chapter 18, we'll see that Moses' father-in-law said, "This is no way to go about it." And this was him referring to the way Moses was administering the group of Israelites. They're now free from Egypt, and he's leading them. So his father saying, this is not how you go about it, doing everything yourself. You'll burn out, and the people right along with you. This is way too much for you. You can't do this alone. And then he goes on to give him some advice on how to delegate his responsibilities. So we see back and forth. It may look like, well, the Bible's contradicting itself. Is it good or is it bad to be alone? And it's not a matter of good and bad or right and wrong. It's just right timing. There are times like when God created man, he said it's not good for him to be alone, and he gave him a companion. There are times like when Moses is getting burnt out, where it's not good for him to take on this huge task alone, and his father-in-law gives him advice. But then we see times between that where Jacob is alone, away from his family, and God wrestles with him. And then Moses is also alone, just taking care of sheep, and this is where an angel appears to him. Yeah, so leadership 101. If you are a leader, you can't lead alone. You clearly need followers. You clearly need assistance. Thank you for sharing that. So it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of position. It's a matter of place. So there's some things you cannot or you should not do alone. You'll be hurting yourself. And then there are other times that you should do alone. If you do bring people with you, you could also be hurting yourself because you're not hearing or getting information that you need. You're not getting knowledge and understanding that you need to move forward because of all the distractions of people. But if you've listened to my scopes before, or you heard the interview I did 2 weeks ago, you know that Party of One, Single Success is a book that is written kind of as a parallel to Jesus's single life. So we can't look at all these examples and not look at Jesus. These 4 examples or 4 scriptures are from the Old Testament. We want to look at how did Jesus handle aloneness or time alone. And a good example, the first example I found, there are several, and there are several quoted in the book, but just for the purpose of today's scope, Matthew 14 is the first mention, I think, of, him really deliberately choosing to be alone. He has followers at this point, but he actually asked them to leave, nicely, of course. But we'll find that in Matthew 14:22. And this is after the working of the miracle of the fish and loaves. And, it's a good day. It's not like he is moody or anything. It's just been a long day, a good day, a productive day. And he needs some time to be alone, decompress, whatever the reason is. And it tells us in verse 22, Matthew 14, as soon as the meal was finished, he insisted that the disciples get in the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the people. So you guys go ahead. I'll dismiss everybody. Just leave me alone for a while. The crowd dispersed. He climbed the mountain, so deliberate actions to be alone and not accidentally run into anybody. He climbed the mountain so he could be by himself and pray. He stayed there alone late into the night. That's Matthew 14:22. So this is Jesus on purpose finding time to be alone. Most of the Bible, we see Jesus with his disciples, the crowds followed him, the Pharisees are arguing with him, the lame want to be healed, the blind want to see. There are always people in the picture, but we see that he deliberately takes the time to go off and be alone. And what is the result of this time alone? If we go further, we'll see that he finally catches up to the disciples in their boat by him walking on water. So we can't promise that today, every time you spend time alone with God, you'll get out of your prayer time and walk on water. But proverbially, you can. You know, what is it that you need to do next that this time alone can empower you to do? You may not have to walk on literal water, but you may have something that seems as impossible as walking on water to figure out or to accomplish. And what can that time alone do for you, you know? So it's just an encouragement to take some time. And like we talked about in the interview I did 2 weeks ago, the interviewer, Linda Brown, asked me why I thought some people don't like to do that. Exactly. If you want time alone, you must take it. You can't just wait till everybody disappears and stops calling you and, you know, Periscope tweets stop going off. Those will keep coming. You have to make it happen. That is true. So, you know, some people are afraid to do that. I don't know, maybe afraid to be alone with their thoughts. It might be a perception of how other people look at them, like, oh my gosh, you know, like we'll see in the introduction, which I'm about to read, like, what is wrong with you? You couldn't find one person who actually wanted to spend time with you in a restaurant. You're actually sitting in Applebee's or wherever by yourself with a book. Ugh, poor thing, you know, pobrecito. So in our introduction, this is what sparked the whole idea for the book, and I won't go into all the details of it. I have that interview saved on catch.me/Luana Helena. That's where you can find all these scopes long after Periscope takes them off after the 24-hour period. So and then yeah, LuanaHelena.com would be a great place just to find everything, but specifically for any scopes later on, there would be at catch.me with a K/Luana Helena. So here's the introduction of the book. Yep, people pleasing and discomfort with self and silence. Those are reasons that we don't pursue that time alone. But look at the trade-off. So what if somebody says, ooh, lonely loser, whatever? What if you get a divine download that you could not have gotten in any other circumstance or any other place? What is the trade-off? What is the price? You know, some stranger's opinion of you versus God's direct communication with you. You know, something divine, something heavenly that you just could not pick up with all the noise around you. It's definitely worth it. But you know, when we thank you, LuanaHelena.com is the one stop for the book and everything else. But yeah, so about 15 years ago, I kind of had the same situation. I was on my way to see a play. It was Cats, and it was too early. The box office was still closed, so I went to eat at a restaurant by myself, thinking nothing of it. It's, you know, just hadn't had breakfast, so why not stop and do that while I wait. So if you have the book, you'll see the introduction is what I'm about to read here, and the maitre d' is kind of coming up to me, and party of one, you know, he's whispering and looking around like he couldn't believe this was actually happening. And then I responded to him kind of in the same manner, because I'm like, why is he whispering? Okay, maybe I should whisper too. And I'm like, yes. And then, you know, kind of brushed it off. He wrote my name down. And then party of two, he kind of yells that out to the couple or whoever else was next. And party of six, you know, it was a big family. And then he comes back to me. I'm not reading it word for word, but this is just kind of going through the gist of the introduction of this book. It was written in 2000. The introduction alone was. The rest of the book came to me in 2015, last year. And so finally I get a booth, and then he's whispering again, you know, your table's ready. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll read this last paragraph, because it just says, I don't know why I'd never noticed this before. Never really jumped out at me. Maybe it had never occurred before, though I seriously doubt that, but I was beginning to realize the societal stigma attached to being single. So at that age, in my 20s, was when I finally noticed people have a problem with, you know, people being single, or singles kind of operating on their own. And not everybody, when I say people, not the whole world, but there are some people, like this particular host at this restaurant, who just kind of felt like something was a little wrong there as he seated me by myself. So I wrote this and just kind of tucked it away and never really, welcome back, live in peace, never really paid any attention to it until a few years later. Submitted it for a creative writing class. It got published in the literary magazine at the school. I said, okay, maybe that was the purpose of it. And then a few more years go on, and then, it leads to the writing of this book. So what we'll look at here also, besides the introduction, hopefully you can see that, let me move the camera up a bit, is this definition, or this series of definitions, I guess, I have here. It's the page right after the introduction. So it defines single, and this comes straight from a dictionary, as having no equal or like, designed for the use of one person only. So that's a definition of single. There, if you look in the dictionary, you'll see a lot of definitions, but that's one definition that I thought was fitting, designing single. Defining single, especially when you're dealing with people. And then success is one who succeeds. So of course we have to define succeed, which is to achieve the correct or desired, I'm reading backwards, that's why I'm stopping. To achieve the correct or desired result is actually the definition of to succeed, or to attain a desired objective or end. So when you put those together, you get the definition that is here at the bottom. Let me turn it sideways. Okay, so one who, having no equal or like, being single, is designed for the use of one person. And for me, based on my beliefs, that one person, while you're single, you're designed for God's use. You have no other purpose really until you are definitely connected with a family. So you kind of listen out for your instructions and your purpose, and you get that from God. He'll tell you why he made you, if you ask him and you spend that time alone with him. Okay, so basically putting those two definitions together, you have no equal or like. There's only one of you. That's why you're single, described as single. You're designed for the use of one person, who I believe is God. And you achieve the correct or desired result and attain the desired object or end. So whatever it is you were put here for, the desired result or end or object, when you attain that, that's what I consider single success. Okay, so putting those two definitions together. So how do we spend this time alone so we can find out what is that desired end or result that we're really here for? Because the Bible also tells us that there is a way that seems right. There are a lot of ways that seem right to people, but the end is destruction. So we don't want to go by, well, that looks like what I should be doing. We want to hear definitely that this is what I was put here for. This is why I was designed by God. This is what he wants to use me to do. So some of the ways to do that, especially if you have that kind of apprehension or fear or, what will people think kind of thing, is maybe just to take a walk sometimes. A lot of people walk alone. So workout, you don't always work out with a partner or a friend. Or sometimes you just take a walk. If you have a dog, you and your dog can take a walk, and you don't have to feel weird about it. It's a single activity. So that may be a place to start if you are somehow apprehensive about doing things by yourself. Put your headphones in, maybe listen to some music, or don't, just listen to, like right now I can hear birds singing. I usually scope outside, I can hear a dog barking, doves cooing. You just kind of, listen to that instead. Watch your dog if you have one. They usually do cute, funny things while you're walking. So that's one place to start, is just take a walk sometimes, and that may be a place to get away, to kind of clear your head, and to listen for instructions, advice, information, lessons, different things. God speaks to people differently. I find that when I hear something from God, I hear it in the form of like an aphorism, like a saying, almost like a proverb, like a concept, and I kind of run and write it down or speak it into my phone and record it for later. Another way to do it is like the way this book was written. I was in a restaurant. I mean, we all have to eat sometimes. Always have to be at home by yourself eating. Or even if it's like just a cup of coffee at Starbucks, just go in for once. Don't text somebody to meet you or make it a group thing. Just go in, order that coffee, smoothie, or a meal somewhere, and just sit. You can do different things there. Like last time I was being interviewed, Linda Brown shared that she takes her work with her sometimes. She'll take her laptop, open it up. Sometimes people read. You can just sit there with your phone. That is actually socially acceptable behavior these days, to sit at a table with your phone and maybe just catch up. Could who emailed me, let me send this text while I'm sitting here, maybe listen to a few minutes from different scopes, check out what's going on in the news, and just take a little bit of time away to do that activity, and then set it down after a while and be still, be quiet. You can go to a park depending on where you live. The mall might be a place just to go sit on a bench, people watch, and just be quiet. So it's something that you may have to practice until you're comfortable doing things by yourself. Other times, eventually you get to a point where you don't have to build yourself up in order to be alone or be still. And then there are other times where you use it for worship, for prayer, like we saw Jesus do. He went up specifically to pray. Just sit, listen to some music. My sister I just got scope bombed by Riley. See, this is a little puppy you can take for a walk sometimes if you want to be alone, but not completely alone.
Hi, Periscope.
So yeah, that's my sister, the ventriloquist, talking for Riley the dog. And yeah, so you can find different places to go to and just learn that art of stillness, as it's called. That's actually a book that I read. But the point is to learn the benefits of being alone sometimes, okay? Not all the time. If you read Party of One, Single Success, you'll see at the end of every chapter, every section, there's a balance section. So the balance to this whole lesson, we did the scriptures, we looked at what Jesus did, we look at what we can get out of being alone, we look at times where God said it's not good to be alone. So it's good to just bring it into balance. Find those times where you need to kind of be alone, be refreshed, be renewed. Like Jesus just worked a miracle. He was about to go catch up to his disciples walking on water. And between those two miraculous events was sandwiched a time of prayer alone with God. So we know when we just got through doing something or about to do something that's going to take a lot out of us, it's good to spend that time alone. And then there are other times where Adam had done all his work, his job, his assignment God created for him. And then God said, it's not good for you to be alone now. Right now, I guess he would have been idle after he had done all the work he had to do. So God gave him that time to be alone. Or Moses had a lot of work to be done. So we have to find the balance between those times. Do I need to do this by myself? Is that the time we quote the scripture, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? Or do we say, hey, two are better than one, which is also biblical. So we find the times where company or being alone tend to fit our situation best and just flow in that particular situation the way we're supposed to. So hopefully this was helpful and gave you some ideas, maybe a reason to go practice aloneness sometimes, or if you're on the other end of the spectrum, always by yourself, maybe seeing some benefits of teaming up or partnering with people. And I pray that you enjoy this day, whether you enjoy it by yourself or with friends and family. And we'll see you again in about a month, the end of March. The last Saturday in March will be the next scope on Party of One, Single Success. We'll move on. Thank you. Live in peace. We'll move on from the cover, which we did last time, the introduction, the definition of single success, and we'll definitely start with chapter 1 the next time, and that will be March 26th. So yeah, about a month. Last Saturday of every month, Single Success Saturday, we can call it. And in the meantime, if you still want to grab a copy of the book, just go to luanahelena.com. My info is in the bio here on Periscope. The link, luanahelena.com, is right there, and it will take you to Single Success book. It'll take you to different audiobooks that I've done. I am also a voiceover actor, narrator, so I do Single Success Saturday, yep, hashtag SSS. So I do narrate other authors' books as well as mine, but the link for mine is there, as well as the others I've done. And there's also, let me see, there we go, kind of, yeah, luanahelena.com. And there's also a Sweet Sleep S3, another way to do it. And there's also a Sweet Sleep recording. You have trouble falling asleep, or you're one of the late night scopers, or in anybody's insomniac circle, you need some help going to sleep early or on time. I've done a meditation recording on that. All of that is at luanahelena.com, and hopefully we'll see you in the replay list, or we'll see you back next Saturday at around 11 Pacific time like today, and it will be March the 26th. So go enjoy the day, whether it's alone or with others, and God bless you. Thank you for listening. Bye.